Today's Tuesday, Pickle. And here on Tuesday.
What does that mean?
That means
Math Tuesday.
That's right. We do Math Tuesday here. Math Tuesday, where we dive inside the numbers. And by dive inside the numbers, I mean we talk about numbers.
We talk about the sum of numbers most of the time, if we're going to be completely honest.
Sometimes we divide.
That's out of our wheelhouse sometimes, but other days we get wild with it.
Sometimes we divide.
That's true. That's fair.
Let's talk. A couple weeks ago, we talked about statistical leaders, and I want to dive in a little bit deeper into that.
Okay.
The questionnaires for the 2022 summer edition of Dave Campbell's Texas Football beginning to pour in, Pickle.
Yes, thank you. Shout out coaches. Keep making them pour in.
Keep them coming. Keep them coming. We need them. I'm not going to quit emailing you. Actually, there's one way I'll quit emailing you.
Yeah, just send it to me.
And so we're starting to get a shape of some of these teams are going to look like in 2022. And some of these teams are going to be welcoming back a number of big-time weapons, especially offensively. And so I want to talk a little bit about the running game. And for all we talk in Texas high school football about the offensive revolution and about the passing game and the spread offense and stuff like that,
people can still pound the rock.
People can still run the ball. And I would say that there is a rising tide that kind of raises all the boats in the sense that that yes, passing numbers are up, but also running numbers are doing pretty darn well as well. Consider this.
Okay.
Go back to 2000.
Okay.
The year 2000.
22 years ago. Yeah,
okay.
Chill.
The year 2000, there were 21 2,000-yard rushers in Texas high school football. UIL 11-man Texas high school football.
Okay.
21 of them.
Seems good.
One of them was Cedric Benson.
How about that?
21 of them. This past year, would you care to guess how many there were?
I'll double it and go 42.
31.
Oh, okay.
31.
10 more. I mean,
10 more. You would think that, everyone's throwing the ball these days.
Yeah.
There's not going to be that many rushers. No, there were 31 2,000-yard rushers.
Yeah.
21 years after there were 21. I think that's pretty remarkable. Now, there are more schools. There's a few more schools, but I don't think you can necessarily,
It's not a growth of 700 new schools.
At worst, you can say that you have the same percentage of 1,000-yard or 2,000-yard rushers. At worst. I would say you've seen an increase. Okay? But let's take a look at which running backs, actually, I say running backs, I should say runners.
Yeah. Rushers.
Are the leading returning rushers for 2022. So these are not necessarily the leading rushers in 2021, although we'll get to that. But these are the guys who are coming back, who were underclassmen last year.
So you had to be a junior, at least.
Junior or sophomore, correct, or freshman.
Yeah, sometimes freshman.
Of course, there is an instance here where this is the leading rusher in Texas high school football. They're at the top. Ruben Owens, the running back from Campo, was the state's leading rusher in 2020 in 2021. He was the state's overall leading rusher in 2021. It's the first time that we have a player who led the state in rushing come back for he did it as an underclassman. First time since 2018. That's when DeMarquay Foster was the running back at Wichita Falls Hershey. He led the state in rushing in 2017, returned for senior season in 2018. So he is Ruben Owens is the top returning rusher in the state in 2022. Hot on his heels, though, is Marquise Collins. Marquise Collins, 2,800-yard rusher, one of only two.
And he picked up a lot of that in the postseason.
He did. He hit the gas there in those final 6 games there after the regular season. Of course, he'll be with a new coach, though, with Steve Huff leaving for Decatur. I think one of the underrated ones here is the guy who came in third, L.J. Martin, out in Cantio. He was one of 5 running backs in the state of Texas last year who ran for 2,700 yards. 5 guys. 3 of them are on this list, Owens, Collins, but then L.J. Martin. I think he's one of the more underrated guys in the state. Dalton Brooks, I don't think it's necessarily surprised on this list, 2,600 yards there at Joyner.
And he did that with Doug still getting a ton of carries,
correct,
too.
Correct, kind of splitting carries there. And then Quentin Joyner at Manor. It was a 24, nearly got to 2,500 yards rushing. Got an opportunity to do big things for Manor. Seth Davis is the latest that they went out back in Katy and plucked off the running back tree. And then Killeen Harker Heights' Rashawn Sanford is next, 2,330 yards. He was a guy who really burst onto the scene last year. Had a real breakout junior season. Cedric Alexander, another guy who did big doings in the postseason, a 2,200-yard rusher from a year ago. The only Running back on this list is the guy who's next, Hunter Long. He's the quarterback for Cisco. Now, he runs more than he throws, but he does a little bit of both.
They call it a dual threat.
Correct, yeah, exactly. But he is the 9th leading returning rusher in 2022.
That's really impressive for a quarterback.
Absolutely.
Like, regardless of if you primarily run all the time, that's really impressive.
Absolutely. And then Mckenzie Mcgill, another underrated guy there at Mount Vernon. They throw the ball around so much with Braden Bennett that I think he kind of flies under the radar. But he was a 2,100-yard rusher from a year ago. That rounds out the top 10. All told, there were 16 2,000-yard rushers in 2021 that are going to be back in 2022. Wow. The guys who didn't make the top 10, just outside the top 10, Owen Allen from South Lake Carroll, Paxton Hickson or Hancock from Centerville, Braylon Cosgrove from Aubrey, Noah Long from Liberty Hill, of course, that kind of slot T attack. Yeah. He was just a sophomore last year. And then Corey Stansel from Farwell, and then Dawson Pendergrass from Mineola. Those 6 guys are also 2,000-yard rushers who are coming back in 2022. So, look, I think that you see guys like, especially I think it's easy to project guys like Ruben Owens and Marquise Collins. Right, Dalton Brooks is probably going to see it'll be interesting to see how they balance his workload.
Yeah.
Because he's a guy who, without his brother, I wonder if they're traditionally, Coach Bedeker has tried to find a stable of running backs. You have to imagine that he's not going to just go out there and give him 500 carries on the year.
Well, a lot of times he doesn't need it because he takes them back 80 yards to the house on one possession and he's done. Doug really punched it in from 5 yards out most of the time.
He was doing a lot of the short yards. So you wonder how they're going to balance that out. But those are the guys who are the leading returning rushers in Texas high school football in 2022. It's an interesting list. I think a couple of guys who I think are under the radar, like L.J. Martin at Cantio, Quentin Joyner at Manor. I'd even throw a guy like Rashawn Sanford at Harker Heights. And one of the things I think is interesting about Rashawn Sanford, I believe he only did it in 11 games.
Oh yeah, and I was going to say, like, even you talked about Owen Allen. He missed some games because of injury. So it's like, man,
exactly. L.J. Martin was, I think they went 2 rounds deep in the playoffs, right? You look at the top: El Campo, College Station, Shiner, Katy, LBJ, they all made pretty deep.
They had 16 games,
right?
Most of them.
There are some other guys on this list who didn't get to make that deep run. So what do they do if they're able to play a few more games? Anyway, that's a look at the leading returning rushers in Texas high school football in 2022. There's a piece up on TexasFootball.com right now exploring more about this. I hope you'll go check that out. That's TexasFootball.com to check out the the top returning Texas high school football rushers in 2022. That's the name of the article.
Math Tuesday continued.
Here on Math Tuesday. That's like how you're reading like a textbook. They have like a footnote. That's the footnote.
Yeah.
Is the footnote to this section is to go to
TexasFootball.com
and read this article.
Thanks so much for watching that video. If you would like more and to be notified when they come out, go ahead and click that subscribe button right down there. You can also watch Texas Football Today every day live at noon on TexasFootball.com, Facebook, Twitch, and right here on YouTube. For more of the best coverage of Texas football in the Lone Star State, go to TexasFootball.com/subscribe.